Ever since rumors circulated that Disney would be getting their grubby paws on everything they didn't already own, people have wondered how they would incorporate the X-Men and the Fantastic Four into their already expansive superhero movie universe. It's a fair question. In the comics, over the years, it's revealed that mutants have been part of the Marvel Universe for a long time, like biblical times. Even ignoring the few outliers who have been around for a few thousand years, you've got characters like Magneto and Toro who have been around since World War II. But in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we've seen not a single hint of mutants in the last 10 years. With all the multiverse stuff going on lately, a lot of people think that's how mutants will be brought in, and I hate it. Even with how long the MCU has been going on, I still think you could stay in this universe for another 10 years and you would have plenty to explore and expand upon without bringing in alternate realities. So if Kevin Feige knocked on my door and said, how would you bring the X-Men into the MCU? What would I do? The simplest solution is mutants started showing up after the blip. The Infinity Stones emit low levels of radiation. Pietro and Wanda got their powers from one of the stones, allegedly. When Hulk brought back half the population, less than 1% of everyone he brought back has special powers. I've seen some people say they don't like there being an incident that creates mutants, but in the comics, radiation is the prevailing cause of mutation. See Children of the Atom. It's right there in the tagline. Some characters like Beast, Professor Xavier, and Sunfire, it's even explicitly stated they got their powers because their respective parents were in proximity to nuclear radiation. This explanation would work just fine. It'd be a good idea to start seeding mutants pronto. In Spider-Man Far From Home, while J. Jonah Jameson says his thing, on the side of the screen, it can mention something about someone accidentally sucking the life out of her boyfriend. In WandaVision, on the wall, there's a memo about an orphanage in Nebraska where a human of mass destruction caused some damage. In the Falcon and the Winter Soldier series, since that whole show was about a divide between the people brought back from the blip and the ones who were here the whole time, you would want some meteor references to mutants. While most of your mutants hit the scene in the aftermath of Endgame, some of them have been around a little longer. Pietro and Wanda got their powers from the Mind Stone, allegedly, but the US government had the Tesseract for decades, and we know Hydra was embedded in the US government for about that long. What if Wanda and Pietro weren't their only experiments? Those experiments escaped at some point and have kept their heads low for fear of being captured by the same organization that created them. This might be the best way to put Magneto and Charles Xavier out there years before the other mutants hit the scene. Some might not like this. It's too different from their origins in the comics. Well, one, you're going to have to change up their origins anyway, since Charles Xavier is a veteran of the Korean War and Magneto is a Holocaust survivor. You can remove Charles's history as a veteran easy enough. The Fox movies did it without any problems, but Magneto's defining moment is his history in the Holocaust. But unless you can find a way to have a man pushing 100 be a legitimate threat, again, you would have to take some liberties. And while this isn't their origins in the main Marvel universe, it is quite a bit closer to their origins in the Ultimate Universe. In the miniseries Ultimate Origins, it's revealed mutants are a man-made phenomena, and in fact, Magneto was one of the first ones, created in a lab. And I don't recall seeing any feathers ruffled when Wanda and Pietro got their powers from mad science, allegedly, so I don't think this would be a problem if you went in this direction with Charles and Eric. You could also tie in Wolverine and even Mr. Sinister to this pretty easily. Wolverine is a mutant experimented on by humans. That's basically the core of his character. He doesn't have to be born in the 1800s. Mr. Sinister doesn't have to be a Victorian scientist Apocalypse gave immortality to. He can be some weirdo who experiments on people and has ulterior motives his allies in Hydra don't know about. For Magneto, let's say he was the survivor of the Bosnian War, which had ethnic cleansings happening around that time, so you're keeping the essence of what works about the tragedy of Magneto's origin. Sometime during the war, Eric was scooped up along with other survivors for Hydra's experiments, and Eric was the only survivor from that group. He escapes and spends years hunting down Hydra agents for what was done to him, while still harboring anger over the Bosnian War. Eric meets Charles. This is at a point where Eric isn't completely consumed with vengeance. The two become friends, basically do X-Men 161. Let's say Charles's origin isn't nearly as violent or tragic as Eric's. The experiments done on him in America were more covert, less invasive than the ones done in Bosnia. That way, Charles didn't go through the same horrors Eric did, and he can't just say, "Why don't you get over it, dude?" Anyway, Charles and Eric are friends for a while. They stumble upon a Hydra scheme, again X-Men 161. They go their separate ways because Eric sees irreconcilable differences in how they're going to deal with humanity moving forward. Long story short, too late. Post-Endgame, there's a whole bunch of mutants out there, and the world is a big scary place. Hey, one of the blip people relocation camps from Falcon and Winter Soldier. What's that on the front gate? The X-Men's logo? Maybe Xavier used his family's wealth to purchase one of these facilities in upstate New York. I don't know, not important. At first, Xavier isn't recruiting teenagers to fight this war. He's only giving them safe haven where they can control their powers and re-enter society at their convenience. You're hinting at mutant mutants in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the Hawkeye series, maybe in Shang-Chi, in that gladiator ring, there's some mutants there. In Black Panther 2, after the tragic death of T'Challa, some people thought they don't need the Panther's protection, so they branch off because they have their own goddess to protect them now. In the Marvels, that's probably going to be set in space, but I would want them to have Carol on Earth for some reason. You can have her and Monica working out their issues, and Mystique and her misguided adopted daughter Rogue can be the villains. You can sort of do the Rogue Carol thing. Maybe Rogue thinks Mystique is less evil than what she is. She attacks Carol, absorbs a piece of Carol, which leaves Carol sorting through her memories once again. This permanently puts Rogue in Carol's sights, as Rogue vandalized Carol's mind. She might not ever recover. Rogue walks away from Mystique's cause to try to figure out how to make amends for what she's done. Then, if you are going to do a Rogue series for Disney Plus, she can try to atone for her criminal past there before she meets Xavier in the future. It's only as human-on-mutant hatred ramps up and mutant retaliation escalates that Xavier realizes he cannot sit back and do nothing. We need someone diffusing the situation so we can all peacefully coexist. Similar to how the MCU Spidey didn't immediately go to Green Goblin, I'd want to give people time to forget the villains the Fox movies used. I'd want to do a straight-up adaptation of the first Genosha storyline. Genosha was a super high-tech nation built on mutant slave labor. So Xavier and his students find out about this. Xavier has a friend in the FBI who told him about it. They go into Genosha to take butt and kick names. In the comics, the Genoshans had an energy field which depowered mutants, so you could show these guys having to rely on their wits to get them through some tough situations. The movie ends with the X-Men breaking the mutant slave labor stuff going on, which people around the world didn't know about. So what they're seeing on the news looks like a group of mutant terrorists attacking a sovereign nation with impunity. That's how you'd want most of the X-Men's adventures to go. They save the day, but only at the cost of making things worse for mutant-human relations. This can kinda explain the hostilities towards mutants a little. Later movies, you could do the Hellfire Club, which in the comics, they're mutants who want to take over the world by infiltrating business and political circles and exerting their influence that way. That'd be a great way for mutants to get thrown further under the bus, since most of the Hellfire Club are in the mutant closet. Mr. Sinister would be an obvious choice as a villain. After about 3 movies or so, maybe people will have recovered from Magneto overload from the Fox movies, so you could do a Magneto story. In the aftermath of the snap and the blip, it would make sense for the Shi'ar Empire to have risen from the ashes of what was left of several smaller space governments, so you could do an X-Men in space thing. Maybe have Carol Danvers reluctantly team up with them, despite her anger toward Rogue. This is all pretty light on details, but I'm more about setting up the how of the X-Men getting into this world, and not pitching actual MCU X-Men movies. What do you guys think? If you liked it, awesome, and if you didn't, I would love to see some other people's takes on how the X-Men should be done in the MCU. That's it for now. I'll see you guys next week with some other videos. Until then, have a good one.